All right, good evening, everybody. Tonight is Wednesday, October 23rd. It's the monthly meeting of the school building committee. First item of the agenda is the continuation of the evaluation matrix, sorry. So Mike is going to jump in on that.
Thanks, Rich. Let me just share my screen and we can go through the matrix. Just as a recap before we get started on new stuff. So the first 6 criteria we got through last time. We filled in, just as a reminder, sort of on a sliding scale, sort of from 1 to 5, or from most advantageous to least advantageous, ranking each of the criteria along the left side, with all of the options along the top side. So I'm not sure if there's anybody who wasn't there last time, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to jump in and interrupt me at any time. With that said, we had wanted to go through sort of the bottom 6 this time, which are swing space, parking and circulation, permitting and approvals, complexity, school future growth and flexibility, district operations, busing and logistics, and then construction impact to neighbors. Mainly, I should say me. I took a quick first pass, and we talked about it briefly last time on swing space. But this is open for discussion. This is just sort of our first interpretation, and the approach I took to this is basically any pure renovation projects would be, the most needy of swing space. So that would mean requiring some form of modular temporary space, because there's no space within the building really to accommodate that swing space. And then the ad renos, who are slightly above that at less advantageous, because part of those would involve building some new space, which would help reduce the amount of swing space needed to accommodate the full renovation portion. And then, of course, the new option, as most advantageous, because swing space really isn't needed if you're building a new building in the field behind the school. You would just transition over. Now, we had already talked about field disruption, so that is outside of that discussion. So that was just my initial take on things. I wanted to run that by you. I wanted to see also, before I open up to the committee, Chris, if you had any thoughts from a design perspective on approaching the swing space criteria.
Sorry, I was looking for the button. I think you took the approach I would take, so I don't really have fun here.
So, I mean, and then I'd open it up to the committee and see if there's any comments, feel differently about the way I took a first pass at it. If there's any alternative thinking, we're happy to have a discussion about it.
The only thing I'd say, Mike, is that on the 10-year plan base renovation thing, there may be less, because that, that could be broken up. The roof isn't going to require swing space, and it's also broken up. I mean, that's the other thing I might change, is that one may not be, yeah, exactly. I wouldn't go crazy.
Yeah, because you're not doing it all at once. Yeah.
Correct.
So no, that's I think that's a fair statement, Rich. Anyone have any other thoughts? Okay, sounds like we have consensus on the swing space. Parking and circulation. Looking really for Chris to advise on this, but also obviously you know, Bob and Anna and Patrick, you guys are living in the building, so, you know, the impacts of these on parking and circulation. I don't know, Chris, if you had any thoughts on how we should rate these. You're on mute, Chris, if you're.
Yeah, sorry. I think that the renovation options, so any of the Rs, are going to be neutral. And then the two AR5 and AR6 are going to be less advantageous.
And
I think
4A.
AR4A is probably in the same category. Yeah. And then
Hey, Chris, just wondering why because we're gonna lose the parking spaces. Is that what you're thinking on that?
yeah, you're going to lose some. We're going to be able to gain some back, but I think it's going to be a net loss of some.
Okay.
Yeah. And the
So-
circulation's going to shift with 4A, it's
So-
going to shift, but
So are we
Yeah.
rating this on end product or during the work? Or both?
mine is in product. That's
End
what I
product in
was.
this for this line item.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'd say they're both, all three of those are less advantageous, and then the new build is the most advantageous because we can do the most reconfiguration and things to get the most out of the site.
Does anyone have any questions or comments, thoughts on the parking? Or do we agree with Chris's?
I don't have any problem as an end product. I guess my only question is how much, and maybe we don't rate it or how, but what is the parking impact during? So like, if it was the new build, how much of the parking lot is going to be gone because we're doing it on the field? I guess kind of in-build disruption, or is that kind of fielded somewhere else in this?
The new build would, I don't think would have much impact during construction. It would probably be actually the least impact during construction on parking and circulation. But 4A, 5, and 6 all have impacts on during construction
During and result.
and after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then N1 is the best during and after, and then the R's are basically going to be the same during and after. I mean,
Right.
actually, Mike, if you're looking at it from a during perspective, there's going to be modulars somewhere on site for R3, I think. Maybe we didn't carry that. I don't know.
No, we did.
Yeah.
I'm
So if
pretty
there's
sure we did.
modulars based on the
I think
line
we
before
carried
that.
modulars for R2 and R3 and then a different amount for the ARs.
Yeah. So then R2 and R3 are going to have modulars somewhere. So there's going to be a temporary strain that makes it
Right.
less than neutral during construction, but then after it's going to go right back to what it was. So that's, I would say they're probably ranked correctly because a lot of these other ones you're looking at, you're ranking them based on post-construction benefits or whatever.
I guess I don't see a difference between the during construction versus the post construction. Like, I don't see one of these options that is more troublesome during construction and advantageous after construction. You know what I mean? Anyone that is getting impacted during construction also has that same impact at the end. Whereas N1 kind of doesn't have any impact on either end, either during or at the end.
Is there any parking used for staging for the ad runners?
I think we would encourage them. We would probably do a plan where they don't have to do that.
Yeah,
to
given,
avoid-
I don't know, given the size of the additions, I don't know that, I think we could work around that personally. Other
And
than,
then
other than
when-
the fact that, you know, AR6 is, you know, basically in the parking lot partially. AR4A is partially in the parking lot. You know, AR5, maybe, you know, maybe you're able to save a few more spaces during construction, but
There is one down where the old tennis courts were, and I don't know if you were around then, Bob, but down at the bottom of the parking, the main parking, the big parking lot, there was actually tennis courts down the bottom there. In my mind, that area there could have been or could be set up as temporary parking. That, you know, easy accessed on and off. It'd be a bit of a hike, so everyone would
Yeah.
get their steps in. But you know, that whole area down there is a good, you know, you could almost, it's almost, you know, 3/4 of the size of the existing parking lot.
Yeah.
So I mean, either the contractors could use that or the, because they're young and strong, or, you know, and then, or stage down there and then lump the stuff up. But I mean, there is a good chunk of parking down in that lower, and I think if it was temporary, even though it's a little, you know, it's a little close to the wetlands and whatever, I think is a temporary area, they'd allow you to do that. Just during construction, that's the,
yeah. All right, any other thoughts on parking and circulation? Is everybody comfortable with where that stands?
Yep.
Okay. Permitting and approvals complexity. I also took a first pass at this. Largely, I didn't see any of the projects being particularly different other than the new build, which I think would be a longer permitting process. And potentially closer to the wetlands I know that are over there. So that's why I put that one sort of as less advantageous. And then the others kind of as neutral. Not really seeing any that are more advantageous than the others. But that's just my take. Chris, would you have any thoughts on that?
I think that's right. I was just debating in my head whether the new build is actually the least advantageous of the options in terms of permitting, because it's, I mean, whether it's red or orange doesn't, I guess, really matter that much, but it is the one that's worse than the others. So
Yeah, I mean, I guess the reason I didn't make it red is because it's, even though it's, you know, less advantageous than the others, it's not like horribly, it's
yeah,
out of the norm of what a normal project would seek for permitting, you know.
sure.
You know,
Yeah.
it's certainly not going to be as complex as even like, you know, the Clyde Brown, which required, you know, Article 97 and all sorts of other things that made it complex.
Right.
So that's why I didn't go all the way down to least advantageous.
Good. I support this ranking.
Anyone from the committee have any thoughts or comments?
nope, I think I agree.
Just one quick, excuse me.
Go ahead, John.
One quick question, in regard to the new build. You're saying that would be the least amount of problems for parking, et cetera. Would there be any wetland problems adjacent to the, now football field?
There would be permitting issues that we would have to get around, and that means designing accordingly to stay out of certain zones adjacent to those wetlands. But I believe Chris and his team, you know, could certainly put together a design that still accommodated all the wetlands restrictions in the area. Chris, I don't know if you want to chime in
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. They are restricted, but not prohibitive. So we can definitely do it.
Does that answer your question, John?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so the next ones I really thought really should be spearheaded by the schools and where their opinions are. So I didn't pre-populate any of this. So the first one up is school future growth and flexibility. So as we evaluate these options across the top again, looking to Bob and Anna and Patrick about, what your thoughts would be on these options and how they might rank out in terms of any potential future growth and flexibility for the school.
Yeah, I
So
had,
starting with the sort of the base code repair, where would you see this ranking in terms of, least advantageous, less advantageous, neutral?
I had the first two renovations as least advantageous. They do nothing for the educational program. In future growth and flexibility, they really don't help there.
Yeah.
The R3, I had that as orange because there's a little bit of work done to, like the
The
science room.
science, yeah.
And then for A, I had that as advantageous. It's so it meets the needs of what we outlined in the ed plan. I said
Mhm.
AR5 and 6 were less than that. They, they did some things, but they certainly didn't address the whole ed plan. And then N1 would, obviously would best address
Everything.
future growth and flexibility.
Anyone have any thoughts on that? Any comments? That feel like the right ratings?
No, I'd agree. I think that looks what I would do too.
Next up, Bob, also mainly for you, is district operations, busing, logistics, how each of these options might impact those types of things.
Well, I suppose, R1 and R2 are really not changing anything. So busing and logistics, probably in the first three, are just gonna be the same, right? I wasn't sure of
The one difference with the R1 versus R2 and 3 is that R1 is being done over a 10-year period, give or take.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that's, the most disruptive, given that it's, a long-term disruption as opposed to a shorter-term disruption to operations.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, at the end of 10 years, the buses will probably be like flying buses, so not be a problem.
That's what I was promised with the Jetsons, and it fold up into a briefcase.
Yeah, haven't had that yet.
No.
So yeah, so on all of these, I just like I really wasn't sure with the busing and the logistics. So I'd be open to, people's comments, because like in the one I had sent over, I just had them all at yellow because I really didn't know.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris, he's who disappeared for a minute there, but you had done a little bit of work on some of the flow around the building on a couple of these renovations.
Yep.
Do you want to comment on that if you could?
Yeah, I think just like the parking on the N1 is probably the most advantageous, and then I would say A4A is advantageous, and then the other ones are probably going to be neutral, just because I think it's a lot like what you already do. But I think the new option in 4A do allow some changes to specifically logistics around the site and busing. But I don't think the other ones will really do much for you there.
So the rest you see as neutral, is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I think 4A, Mike, should be advantageous, and then the other ones are
Gotcha.
neutral. Yeah.
How does the group feel about that?
That sounds good to me.
Mm.
Okay. Moving on to our last category is construction impact to neighbors.
And you put that on us
So-
because we are construction experts here there, Mike. Thanks. Well, I would guess, I mean, right off the top of my head, the R1 isn't going to bother anyone. R2 wouldn't bother anyone because that's just basically the same thing. It just maybe a little more because of the it's more condensed. But all that stuff will be on site. The other ones where there's actually construction going on, maybe a little more. You know, there might be some more noise and stuff. So anything that has construction going on, that would be something that would be, you know, less advantageous.
Yeah,
And then the new school, there would be a significant amount of you know, because everything had to be brought in. I would put that one down as the least advantageous because that's basically everything has to be hauled in for a whole new building. So there's gonna be a lot of traffic in there.
And demo hauled out.
Yeah, exactly.
I would maybe think AR4A was or yeah, that's fine. I was gonna maybe say the renos are the most advantageous for impact to neighbors, and then the 5 and 6 are advantageous. 4A was less advantageous, and AR6 is least.
Yeah, I might agree with Chris that you might want to bump the whole spectrum up a notch. I mean, one of the things to consider about the neighbors is that the one benefit to the new construction is it's in the center of the site, right? It's the least close to all the direct abutters. Certainly from a trucking standpoint, that has validity. But the additions and all the ARs are again on the shielded side of the building, if you will, where the renos are closer to the abutters. So just something else to consider.
yeah. I mean, both AR5 and 4A have construction more towards that neighborhood side. AR6 being in the parking lot is more central to the campus, so there's maybe a little bit of difference between them. So I mean,
I would put 5 and 6 as advantageous, and then
okay,
do 4A as less advantageous because 4A's got more construction and more demolition going out. There you go.
okay.
Works with me.
The pickleball courts have hardened them for noise now anyway, so that's to our advantage.
Man, that's become quite the topic these days, is pickleball. All right, so, you know, does anybody want to revisit any of the ones from last meeting? Or, I mean, we've sort of gone through now. It's quite the pattern here, where you know, the interesting thing, of course, N1 has the most advantages, but it also has the most least advantages, part of it as well, with the exception of maybe the R1. Obviously, you know, cost being the big driver on that one. But then looking at the ARs, you know, there's a bit of a mixture here of certain categories that are advantageous versus lesser throughout, and then the there's a clear distinction between R2 and R3. You can see with the amount of red in that category. Seems like R3 has a bit of a better approach to it. But anyway, any thoughts from anyone in the group on how this shook out? Anything we want to rethink? I know I still owe some cost to this. We're going to put that in once we have another conversation with the MSBA regarding their involvement in potential involvement in the R3 or R2.
Mike, where is
But
this
just-
going?
Where is it going?
Yeah, who's gonna see this?
Well, the plan is to show this to the public, right, as part of your communications to sort of outline sort of the reasoning and the logic that went behind whatever decision you make. So this is really intended to help inform the public of sort of how you evaluated all the options. You know, you may even decide that certain criteria are more important than other criteria. But this gives us sort of a real just quick peek at you know, how the different options shook out, and then you have reasoning that you can justify to the community on why you chose the options.
And we
So
also have
ultimately,
this
this
backup
sorry, go
for
ahead, Rich.
NSBA. We'd also have this as backup for the NSBA, because you said that's one of the things that they want to make sure that we had a clear and cognizant path of how we came to the decision.
Right. So this serves as part of your, you know, your logic behind your decision.
Yeah, this isn't a hard requirement, Rich, just for clarification.
Right.
You know, it's a tool to help you guys wrap your head around the various options, because it's a relative comparison to all these options, right? No one is a clear winner, right? You need to look at the grading across the rows, and obviously some of them are more important than others, and you know, understanding the opportunity cost of each of these options that are being considered. And you know, the public always wants to know kind of how this committee arrived at it, because none of them are going to be as dedicated as you guys and attend all the meetings you are. They want the Cliff Notes version. And, you know, this kind of serves as that, you know, record of what you guys talked about, debated, and how you kind of created the relativeness of these options.
There, because someone will ask, you know, why didn't we look at a new building, you know, if you don't choose that? And so this sort of gives you some of that. Why didn't we look at just doing, you know, the 10-year plan? And this sort of shows that you've looked at a wide spectrum of options before selecting your preferred option.
Yeah, Mike, quick question. I know at the last meeting, we briefly talked about your estimator, I think, who's working on numbers. When can we expect to see some ballpark numbers on these things?
So we have numbers that I shared last time. What we haven't been able to do because of vacations is pull together what we call a reconciliation, which is when we get the two estimators. We have two independent estimators, one that works with Chris and his team and one that works with our team. And then they come together and they make sure they're looking at things the same way and understanding the drawings the same way. And so we haven't been able to do that, but the key discussion on cost from last meeting was more about in looking at sort of net cost or net cost estimate of, you know, what these options may cost the town, meaning like if we subtract out a potential MSBA reimbursement for, you know, a new build versus, you know, maybe one of the renovations that the MSBA doesn't participate in, all of a sudden, you know, the delta is larger.
Yeah, not to interrupt, but that's kind of what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
I don't really have a good handle.
So I had done.
I don't really have a good handle on the MSPCA. Do they allow more for a new build versus another one, or is it 40% across the board?
You know, if they're participating in the project, then the base reimbursement rate is the same, and then but depending on the project, there's incentives which increase the reimbursement rate, And then there's also caps that ultimately would reduce the effective rate. So, for instance, site work, they will reimburse the reimbursement rate up to a certain point, and then when it gets beyond that certain point for a particular site, then the town takes on 100%. So what that does is that serves to effectively bring down the reimbursement rate from its base rate to an effective rate at the end. So some of those things are capped in terms of how much they'll reimburse. So you don't get the full, like your base reimbursement rate is 55%. But that doesn't mean at the end of the day, you get 55% of the total project cost. It means, you're going to hit some of those caps on some of these things. Like the new build, for instance, you're almost certain to reach your site cap, which means it's going to have a further effect of reducing your effective reimbursement rate. Whereas a renovation project is unlikely to, come anywhere near the site cap. So they really need to be evaluated somewhat independently. And that's something that, we're sort of in the process of doing. But, until the, final project is designed, it's tough to give you an exact number of what their actual reimbursement would be. We can estimate it, but we won't be able to give you an exact number and say, well, if you choose this project, it's going to be these dollars.
No, and that's fine. I think we understand that. I would say that the thing is, and I'm sure you're working on this, but we have basically, we're going to go into November. We have to make a decision by December. We need information to be able to do that. So, if we could get that, that range of our numbers, the effective numbers back would be great.
Yeah, I agree with that. We need to be able to plug in at least some ballpark numbers, so.
Yep.
It may not be 100% accurate, but you gotta know what you're dealing with before you can start making some decisions.
Yep, understood. Any other thoughts on the criteria matrix? Okay, not hearing any. The other thing we wanted to talk about, I should go back to the agenda.
It's a public outreach discussion is the
Okay.
next item.
All right, so
I'm
it
old
is,
fashioned.
so,
I actually printed it. I have it on a piece of paper. I can pull that. I can pull that screen up just like this. There you go.
all right, so I sent across just sort of our first pass draft slides from us and from TAPE. We did have a meeting today with Bob Mullaney. We were walking through a program on the renovation options. And I guess the question that came up today is, first and foremost, is, do we think that next week is too soon to have this, just given that it hasn't really been advertised or notified to people yet? That said, we can certainly be ready, but I know the important thing is getting outreach and getting people there. So I wanted to throw that out there for the group to see if there's any thoughts on that before I go through the slides of what we think we'll be presenting.
Bob, so what did the school and the school committee get out? Does anything gone out yet from your end?
Yeah, we've had a notice on our website.
Have you?
Yeah. So if you go to our website, the first thing you get is a notice of the community forum on the 30th. I haven't done any robocalls or anything yet. And it's been in the school newsletters.
Okay. Sorry, we weren't sure about
One
that.
of the thoughts that
Or-
Diana, you've talked about a little bit is that, this might not be a bad thing to have a soft start. So we could do this as we have our forum and, you know, whatever we get out is great. It gives us an opportunity to put something together and put it out there. It gives us some feedback of you know, what people's thoughts are on it. You know, if we put it out there and we have a lynch mob show up, then, you know, that would be one thing. If we, you know, we put it out there and we have a, you know, a small gathering and we can get some feedback from them, you know, that would be a thought. But you know, I could go either way on this, you know, especially with the town meeting coming up and all the, you know, discussions that have been going on there.
Are we
So
thinking
what's the
we'd
school's
have
feeling?
multiple rounds of these, Rich?
Yeah, we're gonna have a couple. So this would be the first one. So actually, Mark, since you're here, what would your feeling be from because you've gone to more of the meetings regarding the funding? What would your take be on this?
Putting it together, like, sorry, on what part?
Mike, do you want to release screen for a second?
Yeah,
Let's
you-
have a discussion.
Sorry, say that again.
No, I just having Mike release the screen so we can talk it through. You know, so the pros and cons are we debated when to have it, right? When to have this community outreach. We talked about people are going to naturally ask about it at the town meeting on November 19th.
Yeah,
So it'd be good
it-
to have an
it's already
update.
out there. It really, it honestly doesn't. Doing it on the 30th, I mean, to be honest, the faster we can get things that are, as was mentioned earlier, concrete estimates that we can talk to, because it's now already a topic because people have already thrown numbers out there that have then had to be corrected and altered. And all we can do, like I was at the forum for the override last night, and I had to speak to kind of what this group has talked about, which we know aren't final numbers, and we don't really know, but the sooner we can get numbers that we can at least use as talking points, even before we make a decision. I mean, the fact is it's already done. Like, it's already in the conversation. So timing really doesn't matter. Quite frankly, the sooner we get true facts out there that we can go on, the better. So the 30th, if we can get, again, the 30th, we can go through and everybody's going to look at these things. I can tell you right now that we're going to have people there who are just going to sit there for however long, and all they care about is us telling them a number. So if we have that, or again, estimates, it'd be helpful, because right now all we go on is what we can talk to, which ideally we'd really be in a position where publicly we'd be saying, you know, it's too early, we don't have the numbers yet, you know, we're in a process, and when we have it and we're ready, we'll give you factual information. Unfortunately, some people have already run and posted assumptions as facts, and we've had to walk that back and correct it, and that's just the world we live in. So I think the 30th is great, and we just kind of keep going.
And that was
What-
my thought, is that we go ahead, we'll put out what we have, and it'd be a good litmus test to see, you know, what the temperature is and how we do. You know, we'd be able to correct if we had things that we needed to do better, then we'll know. So, I mean, I'm fine with doing the 30th.
Rich, one question. Have we 100% decided whether this is gonna be an in-person meeting or a Zoom meeting?
It's in person, it's at the high school auditorium.
That's what I thought, but
yeah.
it seems to me, I still want to bring it up. It seems to me, somebody, I forget who it was last meeting, said that they ran one of these, and an in-person meeting, they had like 25 people show up. In a Zoom meeting, they had like 130 people show up. You don't see any advantage to that?
Well, we decided to do the first one as in person. I mean, it just, you know, that was the conversation. We're gonna have a Zoom ones. We just, the first one, we decided to go ahead and do the in person.
Do we
Okay.
make this a hybrid? Could we stream it like we're doing
We
the
can't, I
select
can't,
boards?
we can't get the AV.
All right.
Unfortunately, the FinCom's having something that same night and the person from the school is unavailable. And so they ran out of technology. So basically, we're gonna have this meeting and it'll be just like an old-fashioned meeting. It'll be a public meeting, and it might not even be recorded because we may not have the capability of doing that.
Rich, can I answer John's question about how many people we had? We did a Zoom during the last iteration about what we were looking at, and we only had 30 people. It was not a huge number. And this is gonna be the night before Halloween. Some people wouldn't bother me, but some people will be planning things for the kids, and probably this is not gonna be on their radar.
Bob, does the auditorium have the capabilities of recording it? I mean, I hate to waste just the in-person meeting only, right? I'd like
Yeah.
to record it in some
Yeah.
manner if you can.
The auditorium like has recording equipment, but the sound is not good when it's just the automatic recording. So, and the Millis Community Media, like Rich said, they're covering the FinCom.
FinCom meeting.
And yeah, our video guy, cannot attend. He's good. He's usually at everything, but he can't be there on the 30th.
And the
I
town
mean, that would
does,
just be a consideration if you wanted to maximize it, right? Because if this is gonna be the only one you're doing between now and town meeting, the original purpose of going to just one was having it so it was recorded and could be available for people to view at their pleasure. I think if you only do in person and you don't record it, you're missing a good subset of the population.
But there's no imperative on this being, nothing at town meeting has anything to do with this project.
Just an update.
Yeah, like this, I mean, yeah, rushing this to try and get this in front of everybody either before November 5th or town meeting, it's just honestly the only thing anybody cares about, if they care about it at all before then, is what the number is. They don't care about
just suggesting you could have a resource you could point to instead of you guys individually fielding questions all around town and trying to correct narratives, as you've alluded to, Mark. That's all.
does Vertex have any equipment that we could use? Because we tried to get, they have a automatic recording thing where it'll, camera will automatically circle around and record the voice. Those are tied up at the FinCom meeting too. So unfortunately, FinCom, and their meeting was scheduled and it's just before town meeting. So it's obviously important that they have that.
No, unfortunately, we don't have any mobile devices. Our conference room is not big enough to hold your audience.
Right.
Otherwise, I would offer.
Can I ask-
Anybody know a news channel that wants to cover it?
Mark, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Okay, is this something that I know you just said there's nothing to do with this and nothing to do with this, but the election's the 5th.
Yep.
That's the big override question. Is this something you really want out there prior to that?
So kind of like I said, it already is.
I know it is, but do you want to amplify it even more? I'm just asking the question. This is your decision.
So I think what we had talked about and collectively as a group had talked about is because of the timing of when the decision has to be made and getting something out and having at least one, if not a second, because there was a discussion about, do we try and punt it till after? It just kind of, there's no.
Okay, I'm just
the risk reward is,
the
risk reward, I just don't.
Yeah, I know, but you're
Collectively as a
talking about reasonable people here. Let's set that notion aside for a moment and consider the reality. There's so much noise right now and misinformation about the override. Do you want to throw another piece into that for more misinformation?
No, I completely understand where you're coming from.
Okay.
I firmly believe that there's already been too much misinformation about this project
Okay.
that we're actually, to a degree, better off getting to the 30th and being able to speak to collectively what was said there than
Okay.
what's already happened.
I mean, that's an argument. I mean, that's a good argument. And, you know, maybe you'll muddle it up enough that nobody will know anything and you'll benefit.
So if I could jump into it, I think, and I've rejuggled the deck from what Mike sent you to, so I'll kind of walk you through my thought process around this, but the original reason for it was that nobody in the community's had a legitimate update outside of attending your meeting here since April, right? And so the goal was to let them know the hard work you guys have been doing for 6 months, is that you also had sticker shock with that April number. And you've challenged the team to go back and look at more cost-effective options. So the purpose of presenting this before that town meeting update was just to say, hey, here's what's happened over the last 7 months. And by the way, we're not just looking at these really large numbers of 160 million. You know, we're looking at numbers in the 70s and 80s and 90s and 100 and 120 million, right? We looked at this whole host of options in between just the code reno and this expensive renovation or new construction option. And this is what we're debating in live time, right? And your voice can still be heard.
Listen,
that
I
was the point
appreciate
of
what you're
doing it.
saying. Again, people will then go to town meeting and think that the override $70 million. So that's just, I get it. And it's a crapshoot. So yeah.
Sure is. Yeah, always is. Every town. It is.
I think unless you're on this committee, you don't pay attention to the numbers. And I appreciate what Ellen just said. The last number they hear is the one they're going to remember.
So, and that was one of the thoughts, was just to get out to what you were saying, Jeff, is, you know, get out and, you know, express exactly what you said is, hey, we've gone back, we heard what you said, we looked for different options. You know, I'd say the only downfall we have right now is that the fact of, you know, lack of recording. I mean, the only other option we could do is we could try to record it on someone's iPhone and upload it that way. You know, they keep on saying how the iPhones can do all that stuff. You know, that would be, I guess another option. I'm not sure exactly how you'd have to do that, because you'd have to be able to hear the microphone. That's the only tricky part on that.
Rich, I can probably get some version of recording that's decent through some other channels that I have, but if you guys really want that, I can probably get something there.
Okay, if you could look into that, that'd be good. Yeah, anything would help.
We were pretty much running out of time. It's a week away, and we're
Yep.
still trying to decide whether to do it or not talk about who's going to say what.
Well, I don't think we said I don't think we brought up that we were not doing it. I think we had brought up it for a discussion point of, you know, is the timing 100% appropriate, which is a good conversation to have. Obviously, there's been a couple of, you know, good thoughts of, you know, hey, I think we all had the same thought, you know, are we, you know, putting our head above the foxhole to get it shut off? But to Mark's point, and, you know, everyone else, is that, you know, the more information that's out there, that's facts, I think is going to be helpful. So, you know, whether they like it or not, you know, the public likes it or not, you know, we've done the best we could to explore more options. We're trying to come up with the best option for the town, the best value. And that's when we finally get done with our process in December, we make a recommendation. That's how we got there. I think that's what Jeff was saying, is that, you know, we want to update the people for what we've been doing in the process.
So, and in terms of, I mean, the presentation is really largely a repeat with some additions from the last community forum. It's, you know, it's a lot of the basis of the project summary, how we got here, why this is important now. You know, and I know that, you know, Denise and Mark were part of those previous ones from the school perspective. You know, Bob was part of that. And then, you know, the process stuff and schedule would be presented by us, the evaluation criteria, I know last time, Rich, you had mentioned that you thought you'd like Jeff to do that part, and then, you know, the design stuff would be Chris. So I think, you know, the outline of it and the content of it should be fairly straightforward. You know, the question is really around, you know, how many people can we get there? And you know, I know that we had this discussion last time about it being close to Halloween, but you know, realistically speaking, the audience we're really trying to reach are the ones that have, you know, either grown kids or no kids. You know, it's the you know, the families that should be natural supporters of a project like this, but you know, the folks that are empty nesters or their kids are already through the school system, that we need in order to get to that approval, 2/3 vote.
Yeah, you know, I think we just go ahead. I mean, so you know,
Rich,
I
why don't
can't-
we do it as a Zoom? It's recorded. Whether we have any people tuning in is kind of irrelevant because they can always watch what we're telling them.
I mean, that's fine. You know, I mean, one of the things that we wanted to do as part of the actually being out there and seeing people is the interaction that you have that we won't get on the Zoom.
Right.
You know, we could switch it and say, hey, you know, we could have Bob switch it up and say, go ahead and do a Zoom. We were going to do one in person. You know, if the group feels that at this point in time, the in-person one isn't the best option, we want to switch it to Zoom. That doesn't bother me. I mean, and imagine, you know, it would be more convenient for people. You know, Bob could just change the outreach thing and, you know, make it a Zoom, and then that way it'd be recorded. I mean, what's the group think of that?
I mean, that's an immediate solve to some of the issues. And I'm not sure if you can do this, if you could open up a comment section within the Zoom where people can leave comments. They don't have to be addressed at that moment, but at least you're getting some feedback. And from there, you can gauge what your next meeting should cover or look at maybe.
We
Yeah,
did that
there was-
before and it was successful, I think.
Yeah, if you set it up as a Zoom webinar, they can
Right.
submit the questions to the panel, which would be like this group here would be the panel, not an open chat for people to debate and comment and, you know, do whatever they want to do essentially. But with a Zoom webinar, you could submit all the comments and then we would read the comments back and answer the questions live at the end. I do think there's going to be a fair bit of slides on this one. I mean, I got over 30 some odd slides here in the rejuggled deck. And I think, you know, it's the first time so many people have seen the floor plans, right? Firstly, the new floor plans as well as the ones from back in April. So I do think there is a lot of benefit to people being in front of their computer versus sitting in an audience, squinting to see a thumbnail, you know, really far away.
So
So
that's
because
fine.
this is really looking at the floor plans as well as everything else, I do think it would be beneficial to have it at people's screens, essentially.
So that, I mean, I think that, you know, that's why we have discussions. I mean, if it makes sense to have it on a Zoom, that's fine. You know,
One of the
we'll
things that I thought was
Go ahead.
kind of the intention was, and why we wanted to go live first was to have people to have opportunity to see the designs, but give feedback on them. If we're doing this via Zoom, throwing things up on the screen, and then moving on to the next, people can't go back and kind of look at one to the other and do the comparison. So I guess that's just kind of one of the drawbacks of the Zoom, which I thought the intention of doing it in person and doing the first one in person was to give people that opportunity and to mingle and ask kind of questions and have, so, you know.
I think those are all good
They can-
points, Mark. And I think you'd get that more in an intimate setting. If you're doing the auditorium, you're not going to get that level of interaction. If you were doing it, you know, with an intimate group of less than 30 people, you might get that interaction, you know, but it would be, you'd have to be really engaged with them, not kind of presenting to a large audience, which is the forum that it's currently set up for.
And we are going to have more, you know, presentations. So, I mean, you know, if we do, and because I had the same thought as you, is that, you know, to get people, get feedback, you know, the, you know, touchy-feely thing. But we are going to have more cracks at the, you know, at at the bat. So, you know, maybe we do the Zoom one this time and then do the in-person the next one.
So here's what I'm gonna ask then. How concrete numbers are we gonna have? Because if we're going this on Zoom and we're gonna open it up to hundreds of people, again, anybody who's paying attention to it that's gonna log in cares about one thing and one thing only.
So the cost data that you'll have is the data we presented to you on September 18th, which was the range of options. And I can throw that back up on the screen if anybody wants to talk about it. And I want to walk you guys through the slides. You know, my version up for debate and discussion is I took what Mike and Chris had put together and I added in some of the older slides from the last forum of the options that survived. And I think you want to take them on the journey, right? I mean, the last people heard was that there was this committee voted back in March to shortlist and carry 7 options forward. And then in June, you decided to halt that process. We dropped 5 options off the table or 4 options off the table. We stuck with 3 originals and then we added in another 5, right? Then you released the design team to work all summer and bring costs back in the fall. It's all new information. There's a lot to unpack in this first forum and bring them up to speed. But I think you want to likely explain that journey, or maybe you don't. Maybe you just want to get to the original 3 that survived, and then the new 4 that are on the table, or 5 that are on the table. But you know, that's part of the conversation. Do we take them on the journey that you guys were on from March to now, or do we just show what's left on the table as here are the options and here are the cost ranges, which, you know, range, because you guys haven't made a lot of decisions. We're giving you cost ranges, but you haven't told me what your HVAC system is, and you haven't told me what bricks you want on the outside, and you haven't told me whether you want an EPDM roof or a PVC roof. All of these will drive this cost to one end or the other of that range. And you're not going to have that when you pick the option. You're going to pick an option because you're picking it within a range. Then you're going to dial in all those conversations about materials, building, and how you want it to look, et cetera. So cost is always going to be a range. We're never going to be able to give you finite numbers until you get to town meeting for the actual vote a year plus from now, when you've made all those informed decisions. And then we have MSBA feedback on those informed decisions you've made.
So my personal opinion, and people can disagree with me and majority can carry. I think if we're looking to tell people about the journey and where we are, the people that are going to be interested in that are going to come in person. So if that's what we're, you know, Diane, I've seen multiple times today, you say the numbers that are out there too early and you can't rely on them. So if the only numbers that we're going to have next week are from September 18th, those aren't numbers we want to, we're not there yet from a numbers perspective. So.
No, but I think, Mark, it's important for people to see the designs. And I personally think if you put a design up for somebody to look at and Chris walks them through it, we can give them a minute or 2 minutes to look at it and post a question. We need to get feedback, I think. And I know it's numbers, but
I think it's premature. I don't think you're ready for this meeting because Mark just nailed it. People are already throwing numbers out there and you're going to hold a meeting and you're not going to have numbers. Well, the numbers that are out there are going to carry.
Well, I think what Jeff said earlier is that we do have numbers. The numbers are ranges. So, you know, they're going to give us a number, but I mean, we haven't made all the decisions. So, you know, option renovation 1 is going to be a cost of whatever it is, 70 million. If we decide to make some upgrades or not do items, the price will change, but it should be somewhere in the ballpark of that number. I think that's what all of them would be. I mean, previously when they did the MSBA, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, they went through the whole thing. They picked the design that they liked. When that was all done, then they figured out the number, but that was after it had already been picked and chosen. They just started doing the numbers recently, Jeff, correct?
There's always order of magnitudes. I mean, they're just like we did with you at PDP. We gave you numbers back in March, right? That led to the obvious sticker shock, right? and we're updating those. The level of estimating we're doing now is similar to what we did in March, because all you have is a floor plan and a computer generated model of what a building might look like. You've had no conversation of what goes in the building, what's on the skin of the building. Those are conversations that happen later. You're going to have numbers that go into the next submission, whether it's December or at another time. It's going to be in the range. You're not going to be dialed in, because over the next 60 days, we're not talking about all those things. We're not drilling down. That's not the time in the process of where we are. Just to refresh everybody, there's 3 stages of this process. The PDP is kind of, from a feasibility standpoint, what's out there, what's possible. That was the March timeframe. The one you're in now is, here are all these options. Looking at the relativeness of all these options, what makes the most sense for our town? And once you pick the option, then you dial into what do I want to be included in this building, right? Because the theory is that no matter which option you would have picked, you'll pick the same finishes for those buildings. You'll pick the same systems to run those buildings. That the decisions you make in a couple months from now, we're not going to dictate the decision you're making now. Where should the additions go, and how big should the additions be, and how far do we take the renovation? But you could certainly take it in any order. Like, we're just here as a guide on the process. The committee, it's at your will as to however you guys want to do this. We're also comfortable just making this a design update and a process update and not talking about numbers. The questions are going to come up, and we can give the answers that that Ellen and Mark are saying, which is they're in flux, they're relative. I mean, the options that we showed you back in September was a $20 million swing in each option, just to anchor that, right? You can spend 20 million more or less on any one of these options based on those decisions you make about what's in the option. But it gives you the relativeness of a renovation is 93 million versus the small addition is 120 versus the 4A is 147, right? And those are the big swings that you guys were thinking about and help you get informed decisions. So it's
Let me give I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Jim.
I'm going to give you a perspective, my perspective, which we all know is a little different than most people's, but my perspective would be, what's the value of these designs? And ultimately, what's the cost drivers that we're going to end up? And to me, it's important to understand potentially what the reimbursement rate would be, because that translates to the value of a design. Even though one may be 10 million more than another, it's better value because we maybe have a larger reimbursement, right? But if across these 7, the costs are not markedly different, and markedly is, pick a tens of millions number, I don't care about the design. I'm assuming the design is sufficient for what is going to be needed, and it's not outlandish. We're not building the Taj Mahal here. It comes down to really, what are the numbers? Because most people aren't really going to care about the design, honestly. It's they're not going to have an opinion of, but they might have a visual opinion, right? But the functionality of the building and ultimately what happens inside, I don't think most people are going to weigh in too much, other than an aesthetics thing, right? So the costs are important at some point in time. That's my perspective, right? Just
I guess again, in the committee can, we take a vote, whatever you want to do. In order to have these nuanced conversations about where we are in the process and where the costs are and where the ranges is, that is significantly easier to do in person than with even 30 or 40 people on a Zoom. If people are going to ask questions and do that, even just going back to last night for the forum for the override, not that a ton of people stuck around and had questions at the end, but having personal conversations to be able to address questions and get into a nuance that you can't do in a presentation over Zoom. I just think this first one should be in person. For where we are, I just think it should be in person.
All right, well, I don't know, Diane, do you have any thoughts beyond?
can understand what Mark's saying, but I think that the ability to get a reasonable sized group for next Wednesday is not gonna be easy. We're too close. And I think the Zoom will give us some reaction. And if nothing else, it'll give us something that people can watch when they have time. A lot of people do that.
But aren't we having more than one anyway?
We are, correct. And that's something, that's the next thing on their agenda, was to confirm the public forum schedule. So that would be our next conversation point.
So
but-
our whole plan originally coming into tonight was in person and then doing a Zoom or hybrid down the road before we make a decision.
We had multiple. Jeff wanted to get a couple in. So we were going to do this one. We were trying to he wanted to get 2 in October, which we got down to 1, because we wanted to do that before the, try to get one in before the town election. And then we were going to give a little breathing room after the election because we didn't want to have it right after. And then we have until December to fit some other ones in. And that's what.
Well, we had originally when we outlined, back this summer, when we outlined the 2 options in terms of schedule, the aggressive one, which is the one we're on now, which is a December submission for a February board meeting, we had outlined as a presentation to you, showing 3 public forums, one the end of October, one in mid-November, and then a sort of final one the first week of December before you decide on your preferred alternative. I know there was some question after last week's SBC meeting about that November one and its timing relative to both the election and the town meeting on the 19th. So that one was put into question last time. But our original thinking was late October, mid-November, and then early December. So there's like a couple of weeks between each one. And you get, one after the town meeting. So you have some feedback from that. That was our original proposal. That said, it's your project. So you should decide, what you think is best for your town.
Well, I would say, I think we should hold what we originally put in. And the thing on keeping our foot on the gas is, and to Mark, it's not going to get any better. The longer this thing goes on, I think that it more gives, more time for the bucket to get agitated. So my personal opinion is that we go ahead, we have the 3 forums, we make our decision, we put it forwards, and there you go. That's my thought. And then, when we get down to town meeting next spring, that we'll have to, then the hard work to do try to get enough support would be, prior to that.
Yeah, there'll certainly be plenty of public forums come, next summer, prior to a fall special town meeting when you're going to be asking for approval for the project. So this isn't like this is our last bite at the apple. This is just trying to get feedback, and enough feedback that you can make a decision on your preferred alternative. So that's kind of before you submit that to the MSBA.
Well, let's see. So we have to make a decision. Yeah, we have to make a decision.
One other thing is just as you could see, you've got a wide range of options. And so, our thinking was, in order to get, a decision-making process, that you needed that feedback in order to decide, what the town was thinking, what they'd be willing to support.
Well, I mean, the question is that I would pose is, I'm not sure how we would, how are we going to gather that support? I mean, not gather, sorry, gather that information. We're hearing stuff on Facebook. They have some public meetings. I mean, it's not like, the Gallup poll's gonna call people up and, poll the
Yep.
town and find out what's going on. So, that's kind of a,
There are ways to send out a poll for people to participate in. There's different ways that you could do some more outreach to try to get that feedback. Even if people don't show up for the forums. But the forums are our primary tools, shall we say. And the hope is that people that are engaged and are interested and have questions show up so that they can be answered. However, that's not the only tool in the tool bag to be able to reach out for feedback. Polls can be tough though, because you have to be careful about people, making sure people aren't answering more than one time, and sort of loading the poll up on one side of the argument. If you get a small amount, is that indicative of enough sample size to really get gauge the temperature of the town? So they can be challenging, but they can be helpful if at times as well. So I don't want to sort of rule that out, but.
all right. So the question on the table is, do we keep the meeting as it is in person? Do we go to hybrid? So, I'm gonna do it by vote. So Mark, what would your vote be?
In person.
Okay, Diane,
Zoom.
John,
In person.
okay. Who else is there? I think
John,
that's it.
the other John.
Oh, John, sorry, I can't see him. Oh, no, I see him. He's down bottom. John, what is your thought?
McDonough.
John,
Lon.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm a big Zoom guy.
you're a big Zoom guy. So we have, oh geez, so we got 2 and 2.
Of course, you knew it was going to go that way, Rich.
Yeah. I
It's all
know.
you, Rich. Good
Can I
pick.
All
just
right.
ask questions before
Go.
you
Yep.
before you decide, Rich? One, Chris had said he could offer potentially an option to record it, and I don't know if that would satisfy Diane's thought of having people be able to watch it afterward, and then everybody could get their way. Or the other question I had is the Zoom webinar. We actually, I don't think, have that ability through the license that I have, and I think that the school did that for us before. But if your person is not available for that night, was he the one that did it before? And if so, that's another consideration.
Yeah, and we just use Google Meet now. We don't even have Zoom.
If I remember correctly, the normal Zoom license will allow you to do up to 50, but that if you need to go beyond that for a webinar, which you probably should, given the size of who you're trying to reach, the size of the community you're trying to reach, I believe that's where you have to pay the extra. So if you don't have an account that, has that ability, might be a
I
challenge. I know.
We could pick that up in Jeff, we could pick that up if we wanted to in the school. Would that be, because this is informational, we'd be able to charge that to the school project if we had to pick up that license?
Yeah, I don't know what the license cost, but yes, you could charge that to the project.
I think a Google Meet could probably do it too. Anna and
Yeah,
Pat.
I mean, that's something new again. So, I mean, I don't know, that's the problem is, like, some people use Teams, some people use Zoom.
Yeah.
The town has used a lot of Zoom. I think if we start introducing Google, because, my kids went to the school, they did the Google thing and they had to show me how to do it. And I still don't understand it. Have to have them show me again. So that would be the thing that I would be concerned about. All right, so and to go to so as the tiebreaker, what I would say is we initially started this as a in-person. I think if Chris has the ability to get us the cameras, and we can videotape it, that kind of checks off another box. It doesn't give us the feedback that Diane had brought up, which is a good point. That people could look at it and have feedback, but I would go for keep it as it was. We'll go for in person and stick with that plan. And then the next one we could do is Zoom.
Hey, I got a quick question. Bob Mulaney, what's the football team use for recording, or is that your AV guy that does that?
No, they use the NFHS.
Cameras
Um,
outside.
Yeah, the camera's outside. We also have a camera in the gym. But and
Sound
then,
is awful,
and then
too.
yeah, and then like
There's
for
no
the
sound.
the Millis Community Media does the games too, and that's when you get the sound, the good sound and the commentary.
All right.
All right, so we're sticking with the we're gonna stick with the in-person at the auditorium recorded, and then we'll get Mills Community Media to put it on the thing. So and I think on that, when we put it out there, we could always put it out at the same time. I imagine there's some way to put something on it. You know, if there's any questions or feedback, we could put our website back up there if people had questions to, you know, put questions back, or if they wanted additional information.
What time are we gonna start?
We had it scheduled for 7 o'clock.
Seven, right?
Yeah, I think it's 7, 8:30.
Yeah,
No auditorium still?
yep.
Bob, you had mentioned that there was like a dance rehearsal that you needed to push back if that were the case.
Yeah, they're all
Can
set.
you- Okay,
They'll be there until 6:45. So anyone that comes in early can watch the end.
can watch the dance rehearsal?
Yep. And maybe we'll give out candy for Halloween, and that'll
Yeah.
get us a crowd.
Butter them up, yep.
Maybe we can get them to stay, Bob.
Yeah.
All
Bring
right,
some
so
cookies.
next thing, Jeff, you were gonna jump onto the confirming the public forum schedule. So we had Mike talked about that quickly.
Yeah, so when do you guys want to, when and how many you want? You know, we offered multiple ones. You know, these are all just guidelines. There's no hard and fast rules.
Right.
But if we're doing this one in person on the 30th, which is great, then we should have a remote one some point in November. So an option would be the Thursday after election, you know, which I know, you know, hopefully some of the fray has passed in town, in the country at that point. We'll never know. But one option would be to do it, you know, that Thursday, November 7th, or the following week on the 13th, that Wednesday, and those would be, you know, before bumping up against your town meeting in your town as two options before we get to the holiday stretch.
Yeah, so at the last SBC, I had thrown out the 7th, but Jim McCaffrey was concerned about its proximity to the election. So we had tentatively penciled in the 14th. But I knew, Chris, was that the day you were traveling though? Was that the issue?
Yeah. Is that Thursday, Mike? Or-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, the 14th is that's the day I'm traveling.
So that wouldn't work for you.
And I'm busy on the 13th, not that I'm the critical one here, but
What's the 13th?
that's the Wednesday.
That's fine with me. We could do it on the 13th. Does anyone have
I'm saying I
a?
can't do it on the 13th. But
Oh, you can't. Okay.
I
All right.
The FinCom people are anxious to be able to come to one of these, and they meet on Wednesdays, so.
That wouldn't work either.
it could be Tuesday the 12th. I don't know whether that works for everybody or not.
It's a school committee meeting that night.
And it's a planning board meeting on the
Right.
12th.
Always
School
something.
committee meeting could get moved, but planning board might not.
No, I mean, it's, we can, there's nothing going on. If I had to, Nicole can run it if I have to, that's not an issue.
What if we went to the 19th? It's a Tuesday, it's the week before Thanksgiving's, so we're
Oh,
probably,
so- Town
That's
meeting.
fine.
That's
meeting.
town meeting. Yeah.
I knew that, Jesus.
Do it at
21st,
town meeting?
21st,
21st. That's, let me see. Hold on. I don't think there's.
Thursday.
That's fine with me. It's 21st for work for everybody. It's getting close to
Jeff, are you
Thanksgiving.
good?
The
November
week before
21st?
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, your town meeting doesn't usually go over one night, dude. That was the only thing that would
Yeah,
cause me
yeah.
pause.
This one may.
No, it won't.
No. Okay.
Are there, this is a special, right? You do like a split, one in the spring, one in the fall?
Yeah,
Yes,
we have a
This is
regular,
your-
it's regular, every
So-
November and every May. So this is the regular.
Yeah, yeah.
It-
So
we-
how
yeah, we
many
don't
other
run
things
two
are on
nights.
the agenda? Do you know, or on the warrant? Do you know?
No more than normal. It won't go, there's no
Two
way it
nights.
goes over.
Yeah, as I said, usually when it's split between two semi-annual, then there's usually not a run over.
Mark,
when we-
where's the override? What number is it?
So if it passes at the ballot, then it'll be there. It's technically a special at 7:30, which is a one article special meeting. The vote will happen, then the special will get adjourned and adjourned directly into the regular town meeting. So which would mean regular town meeting starts, let's call it 8 o'clock.
But which number is the override?
So the override would be its own. So
In the special and not in the regular town? meeting?
correct.
Oh, I thought that was just the residual.
No, it'll be its own special meeting with one article.
Okay. So that isn't gonna hold town meeting up.
Correct. That'll go first, be done, and then we'll finish the rest.
Everybody will go home.
Pretty much. So we'll be done by 9:30.
Yeah. Ooh, 9
So
o'clock
let's,
better.
21st. So how's the 21st sound?
It's good for me. I don't know about anybody else.
I can do
Yeah,
the
fine with
21st.
me.
Yep.
Okay,
Works.
so we'll do 21st. We're gonna do it as a Zoom this time.
Mhm.
And Bob, for that, we'll see if you guys or somebody will need to pick the license up. So, I mean, I don't know if it makes sense for the school to do it, which I think it probably makes the sense to have the school pick it up.
Maybe we'll get one of those free 7-day trials and.
Well, you guys can use it for other things after you're all done. So there you go. It might
Well,
be a
no,
win-
we had it, but now we use Google Meet.
Yeah.
Bob,
Saving
except-
money.
The trials only give you 45 minutes.
Yeah, you
Oh,
don't
okay.
want to do a trial.
That's not a good thing.
Yeah.
All right, and then the next meeting, Jeff, so we got through this one, the next meeting, because we are gonna, we'll try to do 3. That will push us into December.
Well, I had tentatively scheduled one for December 3rd. As it starts to get tight time frame with which is right before our scheduled December 4th SBP meeting.
Well, if we're having one on the 21st, and then we're having one, well, I mean, it's getting them out of the way. I mean, it's putting them together.
It's the same content 2 times over, so it's, you're getting a different audience theoretically.
Yeah, that's fine. So we want to try the 3rd?
Yeah.
Same thing, that's a school committee night, but like Mark said,
Oh.
that can.
No, we can tweak that.
Okay, yeah, I don't have planning board, so I'm free that night, so the 3rd. All right, so 12, 3.
7 o'clock starts?
Well, with the Zoom, I mean, does the committee have a preference? I mean,
7's okay for me.
okay. Well, we'll do
Anybody
7.
else?
Fine, we'll do 7. All right, so that'll get us, and then we'll do that one as a, is there any preference on doing it as a in-person or as a Zoom? Or we could make that decision after the
Why
next
don't we
meeting.
make that decision after the 21st, like
Yeah, we
see
should definitely
how
after
the
the
first
first
2
two.
go. And again, maybe we can do that one as a hybrid. Where we
Okay.
do it in person, but if we can get some live stream video or something.
All right, that sounds good to me. All right,
So now we're just gonna talk about content, so, I rejuggled the deck, I'll take you on a quick page through, and then we can decide whether cost is part of the equation or not. But just from an overview, can you guys see my slides now?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep, okay. So, title slide, Rich and Denise would give the introduction of the agenda, kind of what we're gonna talk about that night, which is introductions, project need. Then Mike would talk about project schedule and the MSBA process. And then Bob would step in and talk about the work that he did with the ed programming, more of a talking slide. Chris would present the design concepts, both the original ones that survived from the PDP and then the new options that you guys have reviewed this summer and fall. And then, you know, I would then step in at the end with preliminary evaluation matrix, what that should say. And then obviously community feedback we want to get into. So these are the slides from the spring, just Denise's talking points on how we got here, existing conditions reports that were done, and the tough shape of the existing building. Why now, right? That's all Denise and Rich and Bob. Mike would do a high level review of the 3 steps of the MSBA process, the completed stage, the one we're in now, which is evaluation of options and a preferred solution, and then all the technical stuff that comes later. He'll then kind of give you the overall timeline of where we are to the public. Bob would then step in and talk about the visioning that he did back in the spring and the ed programming, some of the important things that they can't deliver today in their building, but want to deliver tomorrow. So that's kind of the meat of this particular topic. And then I wanted to, this is where we can have a discussion point, but these are the options that we're in as part of the PDP and where I think it's worth kind of pausing with the public and saying, hey, we kind of narrowed a much longer list down to these options about the new construction we had to do, this reno and all these add renovations, but price tag came in very high. You know, we're well aware that that's a significant cost in town. So we wanted to look at alternatives that were less expensive than some of these options on the table. So what we did was we kept the renovation, we kept the addition renovation, we kept the new construction as part of the baseline comparison in the running for consideration. But in the meantime, we talked to the design consultants and we asked them to come up with alternative renovation and alternative add renovations that were less expensive than these options. And so this one here, all right. So what that is we came up with an alternative renovation 2 and 3 that were less expensive than renovation 1, and smaller addition renovations, AR5 and AR6 that were less than AR4A. We really wanted to kind of go through that. And then what I could do here, going back for a second, is we could have a refresher on what the options are that remained, which is here's this renovation. And what we're doing is keeping with the existing building and renovating in place these spaces. Here's 4A, where we added a middle school wing with a new gymnasium. And then ultimately, here's this site plan associated with it. And then here's the new construction option, kind of anchoring them back to what we did back in the spring. So that's a point you guys can think about for a second in terms of flow.
No,
Then it's kind of what are we looking at? You want to take a question now, or?
No, I think that I think that's fine. Because I think, like you said, I think the way you presented it is a high level. I think part of what our presentation should be is I know there's a lot of information. You can lose people if it goes on too long. So I think the thing of, kind of hitting them quick, giving them a little, little bits of information, I think is good. And your walkthrough of basically, exactly what you said, I think is a good approach.
Okay. So then these are the design options being studied. So these are our new 4 options that we're going to walk the public through. And so then Chris goes into the fact that we took a step way back. We looked at this 10-year master plan, which is if the cost of doing nothing, what does the building absolutely need within the next 10 years that are at the end of life? And then we kind of rolled that all into one singular project as a renovation that allows you to do some, efficiencies and costs and things like that, which will be a hang up when we show costs because it is slightly higher when you roll it all together than the extended version. So I do want to take another peek at the 10-year cost before we go to the public. And we talked about the renovation, which adds some science rooms, and then the AR5, which has the STEM wing, science wing, and then the AR6, which has a gymnasium. Kind of where we would do these 10-year planning in increments, and Chris would kind of walk the public through that. These are the things that absolutely have to get completed, even if this project goes away. And then, R3 is the first floor plan he shows, which are really these science grade upgrades. And then he goes into AR5, which is this science wing addition, what that looks like from a site plan, a massing plan, and then the gymnasium with the science and the old gym. And he would talk you through that, what that looks like from a site plan, what that looks like from a massing plan. And then Mike would step in and talk about cost, right? We anchor people into the why. Why is it more expensive than it was a few years ago, like Clyde Brown? Talks about inflation, talks about volatility, talks about trades being up still, code impacts, other changes. We then show the history of the MSBA's timeframe, anchoring in Clyde Brown, where the whole product is right now. And then these are the ranges. And so this is $20 million swing. So the older projects that we studied back in March had the range of, 95 to 103 for the renovation, the full renovation, the gut renovation. AR4A, at that 133 to 147, and the new construction up at 162. You asked us to look at things that were less expensive from a renovation, less expensive from a ad reno. So here we are, right? We have renovations that came in under that. There's a $20 million range in here based on the decisions that this committee can make. And we can rattle off a whole bunch of things like sustainability goals, equipment types, finishes of materials, durability. There are trade-off costs, right? You can get less expensive materials up front, but then it doesn't last as long. These are informed decisions that you've tasked your building committee with making.
Jeff, can I just jump in for 1 minute?
Yep.
Go back to that last slide on the 10-year plan, the one you had, the 10-year plan. That's the one that we have to tell them, or we have to let them know the MSBA will not, they won't go ahead and help us with that, correct?
Yeah, this is 100% on the town's dime. And
They
I
have- that has
do
to
want to
be-
go back and look at these two in the Delta. I'll dig back into the detail before we present.
But that's one thing that we want to make sure is because like Mark said, someone's going to look at and they're going to say, oh, wow, look at that. It's only 49 to 58. Yeah, but we would get, if we had the MSBA on a project that they would participate in, we would get double the amount because they would give us 50% more. We would get that money, which would give us more of a value. That's the whole thing that we want to make sure. And to Jim Duffy's point, we want to make sure we're getting a value. And that's the key that I want to make sure we push out.
Yeah, but I think for our talking point standpoint, it's probably like a third is what we kind of want. We could say our percentage is 55% of all eligible costs, but it's probably in that third, 33%. It may very well get up higher, Rich, but I just don't know.
Well, whatever. We're going to get money from the state that we won't be getting for the plain old fix up what we
Right,
have.
with these lower options, we may get a third of the cost reimbursed.
Correct.
Potentially. That needs to be developed. But as you can see from the example, with the renovation, if you got a third of that, you're in line with what you're spending over a 10-year horizon with that first project with the 10-year plan.
I think the other piece on the 10-year project, if it's accurate, is also to acknowledge the risk that
things go.
It's a 10-year plan, but if something goes wrong and we trip a code, you're not doing it over 10 years. I think people just because they're appropriately, people will be like, hey, if it's only, again, we've gone through all that, but like just acknowledging that it's not guaranteed that we could push it out over the full 10 years.
And the codes may change. I mean, right now the codes have gotten stricter in the past couple of years. There's nothing to say that, they may increase the codes and in 5 years, and then that cost may increase also. So. All right. Sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
And then, so that's okay. And then, so, how does the committee get there? These are tried and true established criteria that we're using in all the towns that Tepe and Vertex work on. It's really how you evaluate these options from a relative component. The building committee over the last couple of months has talked and debated about the ed program impacts, cost, schedule, duration, yada, yada. We then put that into a table to help them understand it and kind of rate the relativeness of these comparisons. And then I would drop in, if you guys want, the table you've drafted tonight with a draft stamp over the top. That initial conversations are this, but the committee continues to debate the nuances of these options and solicit feedback from the public, so that as they go through the next couple of months, they fine tune this matrix, as well as dial in some of the cost assumptions and ultimately get to their recommendation, which may be targeted as December of this year. And so that was going to be it, and then kind of lead to the next steps, right? You're collecting feedback, you're refining as necessary, hoping by the middle of December to make a recommendation, and then develop schematic design plans next spring and summer, and then have more community engagement in the fall, and then come back to a town meeting next year. So that was the presentation as I was kind of envisioning it, but I open it up for questions.
No, I think that hits the nail on the head. I mean, that's, like I said, the only thing is that when they did the spring one, and I think you and I had the conversation, the educational guy was fantastic, very, very, knowledgeable guy. it kind of dragged on a little in there. We don't have that. We have Bob, and we gave Bob the 15-minute executive summary, so he's going to bang right through that. But I think my thought is to keep it informative but light enough that it doesn't drag on.
Those costs were unreimbursed, right? Those are just the raw cost ranges.
Just total cost, yep.
Correct.
Yep.
So you could, for effectiveness, say if it's a 40% reimbursement versus 50%, or project some reimbursement rate range in there, might be
I
might be
hear
a
you,
good
Joe.
way
I haven't done a renovation to this limited level before, and I can't get the MSBA to give me a guide or a metric. They're very, I'm not gonna use the word standoffish because they are talking to us, but they're saying, you guys need to decide what you want to do and then submit it. When you put the package together, we'll review it and tell you how it meets up to our standards. It's up to us, you as a building committee, to make the decision. Don't just say, what will you give me, and then back into a number. That's not what they want to do. They want you to define the ed program, make the decision that works for your town, and then they hand you the money, that they think is fair for the process. And that's the challenging part. You guys want to get to the end, and they don't want to give you the answer to the test yet. And that's the challenge we're kind of stuck with. If it was a new construction, I'd give you an answer right away. I know that number. I just don't know how to predict this one here.
I guess the struggle is, and I know you guys know this, but it's the are they going to participate in we know they're not going to participate in the 10-year plan. Are they going to participate in R2, and are they going to participate in R3?
R2 is very questionable. R3, I think, yes. I think there's, I'm going to go back at them again, as I continue to do, try and get some more information that we can use to our advantage. What I talked about with Bob and Chris and Mike today was, we've done math on what they think is acceptable from a science lab standpoint, number of students per square feet. I want to go back at them and try and get them to give me what the range of that is. What's an acceptable square foot per student in a renovation that they would back into, because that will help us a little bit dial in some of that renovation scope. And so Bob and I and Mike also sat today and talked about what do we have in those R2, R3s, right? Because the hardest thing for you guys to get here to talk about is that the cost doesn't really matter because you don't know what you're buying, right? In a grand scheme of things, you have to understand the program, because each of these is not the same, right? You're getting more at every level. You're paying more at every level, but you're getting more at every level. Right. And I'm not saying you guys don't understand what we've presented to date, but I'm just saying there's a lot of nuances to that. And we're trying to give you more information so you understand the trade-off and opportunity costs of going from an R2 to an R3 to an AR5 or AR6, right? Each of those gets you more, but it comes with a price tag.
Jeff, you brought up the size in the science rooms and the ratios. And I don't know the answer, and maybe Bob can get you this. Obviously, we have the override. If the override fails, and therefore, because you guys did all this off of staffing and ratios that were based on pre-reduction levels.
Yes.
Is there, I guess it would be good to know, and you may not, I'm not asking for this necessarily for next Thursday, but just to put in the thing, if this override failed, does it alter the limited renovation that we're allowed to do because our class sizes are bigger for other classes and it's not just science? And maybe it is still just science, but there's a risk that the ratios, unless they never look back and they never look at what the ratios are today. But you guys did, but all this work in size was done off of 15, some number more people in the build, more staff in the building. So class sizes were smaller.
So I'm gonna let Bob or Chris or Mike answer this whatever way they want. My opinion on it is with R2, R3, AR5, and AR6, you're getting less things that are in the program in the A4A. And what I was trying to work with them today with our working session is who was left out of the dance, right? When the music stopped and Chris starts to juggle up all the various pieces, what components are outside of that, right? As an example, AR4A has 2 art rooms. Right now, Bob is not able to have 2 art rooms, so that's become a gen ed classroom. So R2 does not have the second art room, right? Because you're using that as a general ed classroom. And so we need to answer that question for you, Mark. And so I've tasked Bob and Chris with kind of helping me understand that so that we can give you those answers of with each of the R2, R3, and AR5 and 6, what are the missing pieces with each one of those, right? Because you may say, well, I really need that second art room, or I really need that 5th science lab, or whatever it is, and I need to go that extra step to the next option. Because if not, we're deficient in some basic requirement we have. So that is a task that Chris and Bob are working on.
All right,
Yeah,
is there any other comment from the, oh, go ahead, Bob, sorry.
Oh, yeah, and Jeff, I think you also mentioned today the focus for like square footage per kid seems to be in the science rooms more than the general classrooms.
That's correct. Yeah, because I mean, they're obviously safety concern is what the MSBA said. Their that threshold is, sorry, for the right word. What their threshold is around safety, because the chemistry labs, have gases, they have acids and things like that, and so they just want to make sure programs they invest in, people aren't at risk because there are too many people in one classroom for that kind of space. Now, there's ways to work with that. Chris and I were talking about, is it fixed furniture in their classroom? Are the sinks on the perimeter and the middles open? What happens in those rooms, right? Is it a biology lab versus physics versus chemistry? I mean, there are layers of the onion that we would never get to at this stage that we're being forced to peel back as we start to think about what can we do in these rooms. And so that's where I think the ratio is important than talking with Bob about what he needs per grade level, per classroom type of science.
All right, was there any other questions, any other comments on the presentation, or do you think we're good to go with what Jeff put forward?
How long do you think it'll take you to go through the deck, Jeff?
Depends on how fast you want us all to talk.
Wait, that's my usual answer.
We're gonna give you
in all
coffee.
honesty,
We try to keep it to a half an hour is usually our goal. And I think we were pretty close to that when we went through. There's a little bit more meat on the bone here than there was back in March.
40 minutes, but yeah, I think we're probably 40,
So
45
yeah,
minutes.
we're probably closer to 40 as Jeff mentioned. So
Yeah, I mean, the older options will go a little quicker, and the recap we can go quicker, and then depending on who's in the audience, if they're the people that always show up, right, that showed up in the spring, we can go faster through the recap stuff than the new stuff, right? So the second half of it is all new, right, with all the new options and the evaluation process.
Okay.
All right, that sounds great. Thank you. What else? So I think we had budget and pricing update, which I think you kind of covered somewhat in what you went through. You had the slides.
Yeah, we're still waiting on reconciling our estimates with PM&Cs. So we have the 2 raw numbers, but we're waiting on that meeting next week to try and get that worked out.
All right. Do you have anything else that you think we need from you guys?
I don't know, Mike or Chris, did I forget to talk about anything?
not tonight. No.
All right,
Invoices.
good. Yeah. All right, good. Well, thank you guys. Appreciate it. We're going to jump on to invoices after that. So I think unless you want to sit in and watch us approve bills, I think we're good.
Okay.
All right,
Thank
great.
you.
Well, thanks, guys. Appreciate the
Thank you.
time. All right, Kim. And so the next item on the agenda is to review and approve invoices. So
Okay, we have TAPE for the month of September for $9,070.60.
yep. And that was for surveying work for the surveys, because I read the thing, which was done in September. Or that's when we get the bill. Anyhow, so I make a motion that we approve the amount of $9,070.60 for TAPE Architects.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Let's see, Diane?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
And the other John McDonough,
Aye.
and I'm an aye too. Okay, that was approved unanimously.
Okay,
Uh,
and then we have one from Vertex. In the amount of $10,418.50 for professional services for the month of September.
Yep. So I make a motion that we approve the amount of $10,418.50 for Vertex for invoice for work done in September.
Second.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. Diane,
Aye.
John Larkin,
Aye.
John McDonough,
Aye.
and I'm an aye also. All right, great. Motion passed unanimously. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes dated October 9th, 2024. So I make a motion that we approve the meeting minutes of October 9th, 2024 as written.
Second.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. We can do it as a voice vote. All in favor? Aye.
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 Great. All right, and
Oh, you know what we didn't talk about before they left was our next meeting, which was on the schedule for 11/13 before, but then that was thrown out for a public forum night, which I don't think we didn't settle on that. So I guess I'm not sure if that's still, if that timing still works based on the changes that we've made with the public forum schedule or not.
let's see, when I wrote that down. So.
Oh, it's just, oh, it
Yeah,
looks like.
we had
21st.
we had originally scheduled an SBC for the 13th, so if we're doing the public forum on the 13th, we might
Nope.
need to
No, we're
move
doing it on
that.
the
21st.
24th.
21st, Mike.
21st.
21st, yeah.
Yep. So the 13th will work.
Oh, right, sorry, the 21st, yep. my
We
bad.
changed it. We changed
Yep,
it a
so-
bunch of times.
I know, I'm trying to keep track of it all here. I do have it.
Move it from the 13th because somebody couldn't be there.
It was
Or is
for
it-
Chris. Oh, no.
Yeah, that was, Chris
No, I'm
couldn't
not
go
gonna
because
be
he
here
was
for
out,
the
but you
meeting.
don't necessarily need Chris
Jeff,
for the meeting.
yeah.
You don't need me. I mean, it'd basically be to recap what you talked about at the community forum, any scuttlebutt around town about the options,
Right,
approve invoices and minutes. We would have our updated cost estimate worked out, and that'd be a fairly light agenda. But so Mike and Chris could kind of walk you through that.
Yeah, I say we stick to the 13th.
Chris was fine. He's gonna be at a conference. He's fine doing the meeting virtually. The 14th didn't work though, because he was actually traveling on a plane, so he said he was fine doing the 13th virtually because he would be out of town, but he could still do it online.
Okay.
Okay. 13th.
The 13th it is.
All right.
Great. Thanks for picking that up, Kim. Appreciate it.
Yep.
All right. Well, unless there's anything else, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Good night, everybody.
Night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Good
you.
night, everyone.
Good night all.